Hello, my name is Simon Loughnane and welcome to this new video from Finance Re. Today we're going to talk about financial reconciliations and how Power BI can help us make our reconciliations more effective. We'll look at a simple example together in Power BI where we compare two data sets and drill in to find out where the differences between those data sets are. And then we'll look at a more complex example and a more polished report that a company might use in practice to perform a reconciliation. But just before we get into that, I just want to take a moment to think about what makes an effective financial reconciliation and an effective control that we can rely on to assure us of the completeness and accuracy of our finance data. So firstly, we want the reconciliation to be automated. So the preparation of that reconciliation, reading the data from our data sources, performing any manipulation or changes to that data, we want all of that to be automatic so that the reconciliation can be performed frequently and can be performed quickly and reliably. Thankfully, Power BI contains its own extract, transform and load tool called Power Query. And we can use that to automate all of those steps. So reading the data and preparing the reconciliation can all be automated. Secondly, we want one report, one set of data, so that multiple people can access that and work on the reconciliation together, and people can view the results jointly. Again, Power BI helps us with that because once we publish our report to the Power BI service, multiple people can access that and work on it together, and we don't have data sitting on individuals' laptops or different versions. And thirdly, we want to be able to perform our reconciliation at a detailed level of data. Often when we're doing reconciliations in Excel in finance, we're forced to work with aggregated data just because of the limitations on how much volume of data we can practically work with in Excel. In Power BI, we can work easily with tens of millions of rows of data, so that limitation really drops away and we're really able to truly drill in and see where our differences are between different data sets, and we're not hiding pluses and minuses in our numbers that are being aggregated together because we're looking at too high a level. Okay, I think that's enough talking from me. Why don't we head over to my laptop and take a look at an example together. So here we are in Power BI desktop, and we're going to look at a very simple example of comparing two data sets and drilling in to find the reasons for the differences in those data sets. I've imported some tables from Microsoft's Contoso database. It's just a free database which Microsoft make available. And you can see we've got a fact table sales with all the details of our individual sales transactions. And then we've got a number of dimensions: product, date, store, customer, which we can use to slice and dice the sales table. And this data structure is called a star schema because we've got a central, if you like, detail table surrounded by our dimension tables. And we always try to aim for a star schema in Power BI. It's designed to work most efficiently with a star schema. And actually for reconciliations, it's also a great data structure for comparing our tables, as we'll see in a moment. So here we've only obviously got one data set. So this is our sales table. So let's go into Power Query. Make this a bit larger. So I'm going to rename this as my sales source. So this would be our sales from our transactional sales system. And I'm going to duplicate this, and let's call this one sales finance. This is just a copy of the source sales table. And in this finance table, I'm going to remove some records, and then we'll be able to compare the two data sets and find those missing items. So let's filter out a couple of customers at random. Let's also filter out some orders, specific orders. Okay. Now when we load this data now into our data model, it'll be missing those rows that we've filtered out of the data. So let's close and apply. So here's our new table, sales finance. So now we've got two fact tables, if you like, although we've still got a star schema structure, so you can think of it as two star schemas. And you can see that Power BI has recognised that there are relationships with between the dimension tables and the new sales finance table, apart from date, because there's a couple of options that could be. Let's create that relationship. Great. And all one-to-many relationships, which is what we expect and want. So let's add now a few simple measures. So firstly on the source table, make that a bit bigger, and we'll call this sales amount source, and we're going to iterate over the rows of the source table, and for each row we want the quantity times the price to get the sales amount. Quantity times unit price. And then on our finance table, let's write a similar measure. This time obviously we're going to iterate over the finance table. Quantity times unit price. And then a final measure, we'll put this on the finance table, and this will be our difference. And we'll take the source sales minus the finance sales. Great. So let's go back to the canvas. We can insert a matrix. So we've got our sales amount from the source, sales amount from finance, and a difference between the two we should have, yeah. So we can see straight away there's a difference between our two data sets. Let's make this a little larger. Okay, and these measures on our summing up the rows on our fact tables, these can be filtered using the common dimensions that are connected to them. So let's go down and let's see if we add customer into our matrix. Let's put customer on the rows. If we sort the difference. So now we can see the reason, which customers are giving rise to that difference. We can see some customers altogether didn't make it through to finance. We deleted a few customer IDs, and some other customers, we do have sales, but obviously not the full amount that we're expecting, and there's a difference there. Now, and obviously we could slice and dice this by date or store to get more details. We spoke at the introduction about doing the reconciliations at a high level of detail. And it would be nice to be able to drill down and see which specific orders perhaps hadn't made it through to the finance system. Now, at the moment, we've got no shared dimension for sales order numbers, but we can easily create that. And we can do that either using DAX in the data model, or we can do it in Power Query at the time that we read in the data. For this demo, I'm going to use DAX, so we'll make a calculated table. And we'll call this sales order numbers. Let's use some variables. So first of all, we want a distinct list of all the order numbers in our source. So firstly name the variable. So this will be source sales. Let's call it source order numbers. We want a distinct list of source order numbers. And I want because this is we're creating our dimension. I don't want any filters on the source data. I want all of the order numbers irrespective of any filters. So we put that in an all. Oops. And then let's do the same. Now we know for this example, because we took our source data and created our finance table and removed rows to give us some differences. We know that the source data has all of the order numbers in, but often you won't necessarily know that. So it may be that in the finance system, there's manual journals that have been entered with different order numbers. And it may be that there's some old data from a different system that's in finance, which has different order numbers. So it's always best to make sure that when we create in our common dimension, that we're capturing values from both sides. So I'll do that now for finance. So distinct list of all of the finance order numbers. And then our final variable, all order numbers. I can use the union function to combine our two earlier variables. And again, we want a distinct list. And then finally, we return all order numbers. So here's our sales order number table, our new shared dimension. Let's create the relationships, order number to order number. And we have a one-to-many relationship, which is what we'd expect because this is a distinct list of order numbers. Same to the finance table, one-to-many. Great. So let's go back to our canvas and let's bring in the order numbers into our matrix. So add that on the rows. And now we should be able to drill in and see, so for Thomas, if we drill in, so we can see there were 5 orders altogether. 4 of them were successfully posted to finance, but for some reason, 1002 didn't make it through to finance, so maybe there was some bad data or a problem with the data transfer. We could look at the date of when that was. Again, let's look at Charles. We can expand his orders and we can see that this very small order was fine, but this larger order again didn't make it through to finance. So that's all a very simple example, but what I wanted to show there is just how straightforward and easy it is to set up our data model to be able to compare two common data sets and analyze them using common dimensions to drill in and find our differences. Now let's look at a more complex example and a bit more of a polished report that a company might use in practice to perform a reconciliation. So before we look at our reconciliation in Power BI, just want to take a moment to set the scenario using this slide. So here you can see, so it's an insurance example for written premium. So we're reconciling written premium between the source data and finance. And being written premium, which is just sales for an insurance company, it's a profit and loss reconciliation rather than a balance sheet. Usually these reconciliations would be for balance sheet, but this one is for P&L. And you can see here we've got 3 policy admin systems, Genius, Iris, Guidewire, which are used to capture all of the policy details of the insurance policies and all of the claims and premium transactions on those policies. And overnight, there's a batch and the data from each of the policy admin systems is read into a common database, an operational data store, where it's structured in a common format and held in a common structure. And also nightly, there's a transfer then to an accounting engine, and that applies accounting rules to the new transactions for that day and works out for each transaction an appropriate debit and credit. So converting transactions into double-sided accounting journals and posting those then to the general ledger. We can see here that our reconciliation, you see Power BI at the bottom. We're doing a reconciliation from the general ledger back to the operational data store to make sure that the written premium that's being booked in finance is reflective of the underlying activity in the ODS. So quite a straightforward example. So let's jump over now to our reconciliation report in Power BI. So this report's being published to the Power BI service. So we're viewing this through the browser. And this is our landing page, and we've got links here to different pages in our report. You can see we've got a couple of buttons up here in the top right. This information pane is just really giving contact details of who to contact if you have any questions or issues with the report, which is something that we always like to include, along with links then also to important documentation for the users. And then at the top here, we've got a settings pane where we can set, so we're doing this reconciliation as at August 2022, and being a profit and loss reconciliation, obviously we want to agree transactions for a given period of time. So we've got this date range drop down where we can choose, we want the current finance period, which will be August, or all transactions for the year to date, or all periods from inception, or any other combination really that we wanted to include there. You could include a date selector as well. I'll leave that as the current finance period. And also we can set a threshold, so any differences below a certain threshold will be considered as agreement, and only differences above a threshold will show as a difference. I'll leave that how it is for now, 100 entered currency units. Okay, so let's have a look at our reconciliation summary. So here we can see at the top that we've got an analysis by the source, Genius Iris Guidewire. These are our policy admin systems. On the left hand side is our source data, then we have our finance numbers, and then here we've got a difference. So we can see that there's a difference between the two sets. You can see that we've got some automatic calculations for differences. So here we've got an adjustment for binders, which is just a particular type of insurance contract. And the premium, or the sales, if you like, for a binder is recognised over the duration of the contract. So not all up front, it's spread over 12, 24 months, however long that contract is. So you'll have premium from earlier periods being booked this period, and also premium being deferred into future periods. And that calculation is being done, if you like, on the fly by Power BI. So we can do some really quite complex calculations over large data sets, which is great for, as in this example, where we've got a difference in methodology between how numbers are recognised in one system and another. We can do those automatic adjustments to adjust that data, saving someone having to work that out themselves. Yeah, it just makes the reconciliation so much quicker and easier to produce. And we've also got reconciling adjustments. You can see we've got that on both sides, and this is really where the user then has gone in and investigated a difference and decided, once they've understood what's given rise to the difference, they can put in a reconciling item so that item is shown as being adjusted, and we can then see what remaining difference we have. Obviously, there may be some action to be taken to fix that item, or it might be just a timing difference that will fix itself over time, and we'll look at how we can update those shortly. And then underneath, I've just got some count numbers, so the number of batches we've got with the different sources. If there's an unreconciled batch. So a batch per source is the order transactions for a particular day. So you can see we've got one batch on each source that's got a difference. And then also at the policy level, how many differences we have. So we can see Iris and Guidewire just one policy difference, but Genius, so one batch is different, but 877 of the policies on that batch are different. So that makes me think straight away that there's been a problem with a batch, a particular batch. So here I'm analysing by source, so let's choose to analyse by batch. And here I'm analysing it, so we're using a batch ID, and I'm splitting the numbers depending if that batch ID is in the source and the finance data, so appearing in both sides, or whether it only appears in the source or only appears in finance, because it's good to understand if we've got differences on common IDs or whether there's IDs that are missing from one source or the other. So I can see straight away here, so we've got a batch in the source only, and this is by far the largest amount here. So if I expand this out, so I can see this is the batch ID. If I right click on this, I can drill through to a batch overview, which will be filtered for that particular batch. Here's a few details about the batch. Straight away I can see the number of rows for this batch in the source, but nothing in finance. So I think that it looks like this whole batch hasn't made it through. And here again, here's my numbers from the batch, from the source side, but nothing in finance. And for each of the policies here, I've got a source number, written premium, but nothing in finance. So I think this whole batch has basically failed and not posted for whatever reason. So I'm just going to come out of the full screen mode here. So one nice feature in Power BI, and I spoke at the introduction about working collaboratively on the data set, is that we can interact and send comments through Teams to our colleagues. So here I might decide to enter a comment, and I'm going to flag this up to one of my colleagues. For Genius. And Sarah will then get a message in Teams with a link, and when she clicks on that link, it'll take her to this exact screen filtered for this batch. So straight away she'll be able to see exactly what problem I'm talking about and be able to then carry on and do the investigation. So just a nice feature that makes it very easy to collaborate. Okay, let's go back into full screen mode. So this batch, there's obviously been a problem. Obviously this will be investigated and fixed, and I'd expect that to be fixed quite soon. So I'm going to put in a reconciling adjustment for this, so that this we know that this has been looked at and understood, and we can see what the remaining difference is. And there's a number of different ways we could track these reconciling adjustments. Could be a Power App, another part of the Power Platform, or we can use a database with some front end. Because we work a lot with finance people, we normally find that actually Excel is the preferred choice, and it's very easy. Everyone understands and knows how to work in Excel. So I've got a little spreadsheet here. So let's put in a reconciling adjustment for this batch. So I've got I can include or exclude or amend. I'm going to include. And this is, I'm going to include that this is missing from finance. So I'm going to include this batch. So this is a batch level adjustment. I've got the batch ID handy. These cells are grayed out because it's not relevant. We're not doing a policy or adjusting the amount. 2022-08. Now if I wasn't sure when this was going to be fixed, I would leave this period 2 blank, and then this adjustment would roll forward to future periods. Because I'm confident that this will be fixed this month, because we need the numbers to be in the system, I'm just going to close that off. Enabled, yes. Missing batch. And, investigation. And you might have some categories as well for these differences, perhaps timing, bad data, etc., so that you can quickly see what's giving rise to differences at any time. I'm going to save that. And let's go back into our Power BI report. Let's go to the home page, settings again. And here now I can decide to refresh my reconciling items. So this will pull in from the spreadsheet the reconciling items into my Power BI data set. Go back to, let's go to our summary now. Just close this. Might just need to refresh the visuals. That would happen automatically after a while. So here we can see now I've got my reconciling adjustment to finance, and so batching source only, the unexplained difference is 0, and that line now agrees, and our overall difference is very, very small. And actually, if I go back to the batch overview, so here you can see now that we have in our reconciliation, here's our reconciling adjustment to finance, and our overall difference is 0. And actually, we can see for the policy level now that it's we've also got reconciling policies, because we did the adjustment at the batch level. The way this reconciliation is set up, it's clever enough to know that by bringing in that batch level adjustment, it also adjusts to the policies that are underneath it. I think there was 700 or 800 policies with a difference. Obviously, I wouldn't want to go through and put a reconciling adjustment for each of those. It's much easier to do it overall at the batch level. Something obviously would be applicable to other companies where you've got sales IDs and batches, or different levels that they're viewing their data at. And in fact, if I drill through anywhere there's a policy number, I can drill through to a policy overview. Very much like the batch overview, and I can see here for this policy now, it agrees we've got a reconciling adjustment, bringing our difference to 0. So that works. Okay, let's go back to our landing page. Back to our summary. So if we've looked at the batches, we've still got a small difference on batches that do exist in both sides. So let's now do an analysis by policy level. So again, I'm analysing this by whether I can see the policy ID exists in both sets of data, or just in one side or the other. And see we've got some policies in the source only. Actually, I can go to the next screen, which is the batch or policy level. So yeah, this is looking at the policy level. So here we can see we've got two policies which have a difference. So let's drill into this top one, drill through to the policy overview. So again, I can see here's my source numbers, but no finance numbers. Here's my source transactions, but no finance journals. So for some reason, this policy hasn't made it through into our finance system. And actually, so the scenario here is you can see that there's no policy record for this policy, which is why we've got no policy details. So in this made up scenario, if there's not a policy record on the source system that's been set up, any transactions won't get posted by finance. So that would be the reason. So I'd be able to send this off to a colleague and say, please ensure that this policy gets set up. So let's do an adjustment for this. I'll just do one of the policies that remain. So let's go back to my adjustment spreadsheet. Again, I'm going to include in the finance side the missing information. This time it's at the policy level. I've got a policy ID handy. Again, I expect this to be fixed, so I'm going to just set it as an adjustment for this period. Okay. Save my adjustments. Refresh my reconciling items again in my data module. And let's have a look at our summary. Let's refresh the visuals. So we can see our difference has now come down, and we've got one policy now that's unreconciled in the source. So I go to the next screen. So we can see we've got one remaining policy that's got a difference on to adjust. So yes, hopefully that's given you a good idea of how you would go about using Power BI to do these sort of reconciliations and the process, and how someone would investigate and then make adjustments. So actually here, so let's drill down on a policy that works or is reconciled. So let's drill through into this policy overview. So this is the summary. Here actually you can see for this one we do have the records in finance. So you can see we've got our debits and credits here in finance at the bottom. And I could also, for any policy, if I want to, I can also decide to see, let's drill through to the source data. And here I've got my source data and my finance data. And if I want to export this to Excel for an investigation, so perhaps I've got a difference between my two data sets and we want to understand why and maybe tick them off, I can just come here and then export data and choose some options of how I want to see that, and that will be exported to Excel. So again, very easy for users who are used to working in Excel or who have some detailed investigations to do that work. So that really sums up everything that I wanted to show with the demo. Let's just recap quickly what we've been through today. So we started off today's video talking about some of the key attributes of an effective reconciliation and how Power BI helps us with those. So the preparation of the reconciliation is automated, one version of the data for everybody to work on, and sufficiently detailed data so that we can perform the reconciliation at a granular level. We then worked together through a very simple example comparing two data sets in a star schema structure, and how we could slice those data sets by common dimensions to drill down and see the reason for our differences. And then lastly, we looked at a more complex example and a more polished report showing how a company may use Power BI to actually perform a reconciliation, in this case written premium, for an insurance company, which was performed at a policy level. So I hope that's given you some food for thought. We'd love to hear your comments and feedback on what we've been through. If you'd like to talk to us at Finance Re about improving your reconciliations or your processes and controls around your finance function, then please do get in touch via our website, and look forward to speaking to you soon at our next video. Thanks very much.